conclave being organized by Jaipur Institute of Management. Today we have our chief guest, Mr. Sunil Pant, as well as he's a panel speaker. We have Ravi Kaushik, Vijay Kaushik, we have Vikram Chokar and Kavi Kumar. Sunil Pant has over 37 years of highly diversified experience in domestic and overseas business development and administrative functions with State Bank of India. He has consistently delivered on corporate goals through team building and leadership skills in his assignments. He was adjudged the Best Regional Manager for 2002 and was recently awarded a fellowship by All India Management Association. As credit head for Sri Lanka, he was responsible for compliance and business development. Despite the civil war conditions, he increased profits and successfully wound up the operations of the bombarded out Anuradhapura branch. Sunil sir retired on December 2013 from the position of Chief General Manager, Financial Control at SBI's Corporate Center at Mumbai, where he was responsible for strategy and planning, balance sheet, capital management, ALM, investor relations, banks rating, etc. He was nominated to the Banking and Insurance Committee of ICAI, New Delhi, and was a member of RBI's Committee on Basel III compliant non-equity instruments. He has been deputed for training at IIM Ahmedabad, Harvard Business School, Michigan University, IIFT, Duke University, Asia Money, etc. In addition, he has been a guest speaker at IIT University and FMS Delhi, ISB Hyderabad, AMU, ISTD, MDI, PHDCI, FICCI, Ashokam, AIMA, etc. He has also been extensively engaged in training and HR functions within and outside the bank. I would like to request Deepak sir and I would like to request Mohit sir to please welcome our guest with the applause. He would also like to share his views on emerging opportunities. I would like to request Professor Nidhi to kindly welcome our guest with a bouquet of flowers. Our next panel speaker is Vikram Chokar. Vikram Chokar has the North and East regions for the wealth management business of Kavi Private Wealth. He is responsible for managing the teams and delivering revenues for North and East for both the verticals of the wealth management business. Vikram is an MBA from IIT Ghaziabad and has a rich experience of over 17 years in various roles across the wealth management and private banking industry. Prior to joining to Kavi Private Wealth, he has worked with various corporates such as Barclays Bank, Deutsche Bank, Santander Bank, and HSBC. I would like to request Shikha ma'am to kindly welcome our guest with a bouquet of flowers.
Friends on the panel, Dr. Thakur, Dr. Anurag Singh, members of the faculty of Jaipur Institute, my dear students. It's always a pleasure to be with a young audience. It recharges you and it also gives you scope for re-examining a lot of beliefs that you think are sacrosanct and should not be played with. So I'm sure you would be able to come up with some questions. And I will try to keep this short so that there is an opportunity for you to ask me whatever you would like to in terms of what the banking sector has been doing and what it is likely to do as we move forward. A couple of things that are important in this context are, as we shall run through this presentation, is that while I will be talking more about the Indian financial system in the initial part, the focus that I am going to actually lay is on the banking system and the banking sector. And that's largely because of what was said by the previous speaker, that the banking sector accounts for almost 63%, more than 60% at least, of the financial assets that are there in the Indian economy. Of course, if you look at it in another way, it is not a very substantial contribution that the banks are making. It can be bigger. But that's also because of the fact that the other contributors, as you will see, are not making as much of an effort and do not have as much of a share of the pie as they could have. So here we have is the Indian financial system. I'm sure you will be aware of much of what is out here, and I think much of this might have been discussed in the previous session.
No,
So
sir, let me
audience
clarify,
has
they are
changed.
different. So you can.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I thought it was the same set of people who are continuing through this session also. So essentially, if you look at it, any system has a variety of components. In this case, the Indian financial system, as we're talking about it, has the financial institutions, it has the financial markets, it has instruments with which you access the market and you exploit the market, and you have services which bundle it all up and make it into a presentable component. So I'm trying to put it very simply, but essentially if you look at it, these are the components of the Indian financial system, where you have financial institutions, financial markets, instruments and services, which are broken up into a variety of offerings that are available and a variety of players that are there who are able to make these. Again, as you will see out here, though banking institutions represented by cooperative banks and commercial banks make one part of it, but this is an overwhelmingly large contributor to the entire system. So the stability of this component and the ability of this component to meet the challenges of the coming times is going to be critical to the strength of the financial system. Again, if you look at it out here, what we are talking about here is the various kinds of markets and the money instruments, capital market instruments, hybrid instruments that support the financial system in looking at banking also in a certain way. For instance, if you really look at it, today banking is facing a challenge of disintermediation. When we are talking of intermediaries, we can also talk about the disintermediation impact that is coming up, largely because of two factors. One is the development of the money markets and the capital markets, which is giving another avenue to people to raise money from. So there is a shift that has taken place where a heavy dependence upon banks for debt and support funds is now moving into money markets where people are raising funds through CDs, CPs and other means that they have. Again, the involvement of banks continues to be important because banks often end up in terms of supporting these kind of issuances. But as we go forward, we find that a number of entities that have a very good credit rating, which have a very good rating from the rating agencies, are able to access the market without support from the bank. And that's a phenomenon that we're able to see in an increasing measure as we go forward. This will be part of the challenges as we come to that. This is a more pictorial representation of what we've seen earlier. And here what I'm going to just tell you is essentially what are the functions of a financial market. This allows transfer of funds. So there are a large number of people. Let's say all these people sitting out here have 100 rupees each. With 100 rupees each, you may not be able to do much in the market. But pooled together, if there are 30 people out here, that's 3,000. If there are 40, that's 4,000. And if each of you decides to put in 1,000 rupees instead of 100, that is 40,000 rupees. Now 40,000 can make a small impact. And if it is going to be more than that, and the size also increases, then there is a bigger impact. So what banks are doing is, on the one side, they are accessing a large net of people who by themselves may not have a substantial capacity to take independent investment decisions. It's pooling those resources and pumping it into an area where, as per its own assessment, it feels that the safety of funds is high and there is an income opportunity out there. So there is a very important factor that the banks play, which is therefore known as intermediation. At this moment, I am also intermediating. I am intermediating between what I think is a store of knowledge that I carry with all my years of experience and all of you who I feel may actually benefit from that knowledge. So I am the channel through whom this information, experience, knowledge is flowing, and therefore I am also an intermediary in a market for knowledge. So that is something that you can look at, and each of you therefore will find that there is a perspective to intermediation which becomes important, but it is also a perspective which can change very rapidly. Today, people need not go to classes, you can have remote learning. So suddenly, a lecturer standing out here may find that he's out of a job because you find that the lectures on the net are much better. That's the risk. So similarly out here, there is an intermediation which is allowing transfer of funds from persons or businesses without any investment opportunities to one who has those. And this improves economic efficiency. It is also a system of monetary control. And we will not talk about that as much because I will not talk about the functions of the Reserve Bank of India or the monetary aspects of the forthcoming monetary policies and the structure that the government is now trying to create on that. Here again, if you look at it, you will find that there are some critical markets and critical regulators. So if you are looking at capital markets, which is a market where you can access the savings of people through the stock exchanges or through other instruments which are not the bank. You have a capital market regulator, which is the Security and Exchange Board, and you had a gentleman from that agency represented in the early morning discussion. Similarly, the money markets are essentially the reserve of the Reserve Bank of India, which is the arbiter of the monetary policy. So you will remember that you studied that also, that the fiscal policy is the government's, the monetary policy is the Reserve Bank's. Now they have to move in tandem. That is again a major issue. I remember 2 years ago, there used to be talk of fiscal loosening and monetary tightening, and as a result, nothing working. So we have to see that they move together. Similarly, when you look at commodities, and the commodities market is also growing, you are looking at the FMC, which is the Forward Market Commission, which has a role to play in this, but there are a lot of disputes and debates now going around the role of this particular agency. Similarly, out here there are circles that you will see, ellipses actually, where there is an overlap area that I am trying to establish, and you will find that sometimes there are grey areas where there are multiple regulators, and there are also certain areas which fall between the schools of regulation. That is an area which is known as the shadow banking area in the banking sector and is open to arbitrage. I was talking to somebody who had spotted me in the morning about the concept of arbitrage. So arbitrage becomes a very important function. And if you understand what arbitrage means, it can apply to just about any kind of function where there is a differentiated level of operation. So if you have, let us say, London Stock Exchange giving you, or London Metal Exchange giving you copper at a certain rate at 8 a.m. London time, or let's say it would have opened at 8. Let's say 10 a.m. London time, and maybe at that time Bahrain is open where there is again trading being done in copper, and there is a difference, and you are able to make use of that difference, you will do an arbitrage. Similarly, you will regulate the arbitrage, and that is where the regulator becomes very important, to be able to squeeze out these grey areas and see whether you can have some kind of a control over these regulatory grey areas. And that is why certain countries have adopted the principle of one principal regulator. This is about the capital markets, and I am sure somebody will be talking more about this, so I will skip this part of it. This is the credit market, and credit market, as you will see again, is a very diversified market. There are a lot of players in the credit market, and I am not talking about the informal sector, which can also come into this. I am talking basically about the formal sector, where you have about 155 banks, scheduled banks, and you have a number of AFIs, you have a number of specialized institutions, you have the NBFCs, the urban cooperative banks, and so on. Basically, it's a 4-tier structure that the Reserve Bank of India is now looking at, where the top tier is going to be comprising of 4 or 5 large banks which have a global clout. Currently, even if you take India's largest bank, it doesn't figure in the top 10. It doesn't figure in the top 20. It doesn't figure in the top 30. So State Bank of India is at 57 in the Asian banks. And just about within 100 when you take the overall bank strengths that you have across the world. And there's no other Indian bank anymore, which is a pity because India is a vibrant, growing market. But the negative impact of this is that when you access overseas markets, let us say for external commercial borrowings, as we talked about in the morning, you find that your balance sheet doesn't have that kind of depth and strength to be able to raise money from foreign investors in the quantum in which you want to do. So you have to split it up. You have to break it into either a club deal or into a consortium-based approach where the costs will go up for the end user because there will be so many participants. That is again a factor. So you have to look at it from that angle in terms of how Reserve Bank of India is trying consolidation at the top level, but is actually doing decentralization at the level 3 and level 4, where they are looking at specialized banks, they are looking at niche banks, and they are looking at maybe smaller urban cooperative banks and other such agencies. So that's an interesting thing that is coming up. We talk about it when we come to challenges. Now, as I said, the discussion focus is going to be basically on the banking sector. So this is the reason why I have given you, why we will be talking about the banking sector, because of the preponderance and the overwhelming strength of the banking sector in terms of the overall financial markets in India. This is essentially again a replay of what the banking structure is, and you can have a look at this. Of course, all India financial institutions, I have omitted one or two like National Housing Bank and so on. And I did this, put it together last night.
I think I probably was in a rush. This is the distribution of bank branches. The idea of just telling you this is that if you look at it, you will find that despite the large number of branches that we have, and there are about 1,10,000 branches that we have as at March 2013, which has gone up to about 1,15,000 now. There is enormous scope for opening of new branches. Now there is a debate that started in 1994 in the US when internet started becoming popular, and that was click and mortar versus brick and mortar. We find from our experience in India that brick and mortar branches are still relevant. Click and mortar does work, but it doesn't work in the climate that we have here. So there is a growing propensity, there's a growing movement towards cyber-based services. So you have more of internet banking. Expectedly, there will be more of mobile banking. There will be more of remote access through various means. There will be more of cash disbursement through ATMs. And you will see a great number of substantial growth in these areas, including point of sales machines where people can swipe cards and take payments. Again, if you look at it in terms of the distribution, one of the challenges that we have is that though we have 1,10,000 branches, there is a skewed distribution. The Northeast has only 2% of this. Whereas the southern region is probably best represented with 28% of this. Similarly, CRISIL has a financial inclusion index, and under that what we find is that the average for India is 40.1%. But again, this is very diversified, because if you look at the Northeast, it's very low. If you look at the South, it's 68%. Of course, this is not as good. If you take a comparable measure for, let us even Bangladesh, where it is more than 70. So India still needs to go a long way in terms of being able to address the needs of people through banking services and providing them with a financial touch point, if I may say so. I'm not even talking about a full-scale banking operation, a financial touch point. So that is something that we need to see. And the other growth imperative for the banking sector is going to be that in the 12th five-year plan, banking business will need to expand significantly from about say 115 trillion. 1 trillion is about 100,000 crores, 1 lakh crores. So it will need to go from 115 trillion or 115 lakh crores to about 288 trillion, which is 288 lakh crores. I mean, they are mind-boggling numbers, but that's the size of the Indian economy. And that's why you find people, despite whatever negatives they have seen in the past, wanting to queue up and get it. Now we come to the challenges that we have. That was the overall perspective that I was giving you. Challenges that face the Indian banking sector substantially. Of course, to an extent, these will apply to other financial services also, but substantially to banking sector, as I said. One is the implementation of the Basel III approach, and that is going to have a major impact in terms of how banks do business, because the risk profiling factor is going to become very important and has an immediate impact upon your capital adequacy. You have to maintain certain minimum capital adequacy norms, because that is what the regulator has committed to, and therefore if you are out of sync with that, your rating is affected, you are not able to do certain kinds of businesses, and you may actually have to become a narrow bank instead of being a broad lender. So there are some of these factors. Similarly, risk management. This is again a major regulatory challenge, because the regulator wants very robust risk management systems in place. In fact, these are templated, they are given to the regulator, that is Reserve Bank of India in our case, and they have to be approved out there before they get implemented in the bank. These will relate to credit risk management, they will relate to market operations of the bank, and they will relate to operational risk. Now, operational risk is a very difficult area to actually quantify and work on. And it is something where the human aspect becomes a predominant aspect of the risk. And in a service industry, to delink it from human interface will take some time. You will have artificial intelligence coming in. You will have a lot of machine-based responses coming in. You already have things like internet voice recognition systems, IVR systems that are at work. But it will take a long time before a machine will be able to take a decision on a critical issue which is ambiguous in its aspect. That will be very difficult. Similarly, when you look at it, the other major impact is going to be on liquidity management. The earlier speaker was talking about NPAs in banks and NPAs in the infrastructure sector. One reason for that is the liquidity management. Now, banks cannot give loans beyond normally 10 years. Because if you look at their liability profile, if you do an assessment of the liability profile of banks, you will find they don't have those kind of long-term funds. Even 10 years is a stretched assessment because you are making a lot of assumptions about the customer behavior, that he will not come and draw out these kind of funds immediately. So you will have these available for this duration. Beyond 10 years becomes almost impossible. So if a project is going to actually have a life, implementation life of about 20 years, 25 years, in some cases 30 years, and if you peg it down to 8 years or 10 years, what are you doing? You are creating a very unrealistic repayment program for that company. It has to become it. Because the moment it is out of order for 90 days plus, it becomes an entity. If it misses its date of commercial commencement, DOC is missed, it becomes an entity. So there are a lot of these issues which come in. At one time there was a discussion in terms of an opportunity in this, which was takeout finance. That banks would come in and finance a project at the stage when it was being set up, which is a high-risk stage. And having set it up, moving say to the 5th year or so when the project is largely up and running possibly, but without the ability to repay, another entity with long-term funds moves in and takes over this project and pays off the bank. Now this entity inherits a relatively de-risked activity and is therefore able to give a finer rate and is able to pay back. But the issue here again is the banks will say, and have been saying, that we've taken the risk, when the time has come to make money on that risk, you are bringing in a takeout. So we will not do it. And therefore this is not regular. Plus we don't have those kind of things. The other problem that we are having is in terms of the now imposition of the liquidity coverage ratio that is coming in as part of Basel III, where you will require a 60% cover in terms of what is your high quality liquid assets and what is your estimated cash outflow for 30 days. So this has to be 60% in the first year, going up to 100% plus by 2019. Now this is going to again impose a lot of stress in terms of how do you keep your assets, which means that you will need to have substantially higher level of liquid assets which will not give you the returns that you would otherwise get. Liquid assets will always give you lower returns than illiquid or partly illiquid assets will give. So there is going to be a pricing factor which is going to impact on your profitability, and that is again a factor to be considered in the context of return on equity and return on assets, which any investor will look at before he puts money into an operation, including banks. One of the key functions that I had was investor relations, and I used to go and attend all these investor meetings in UK, USA, Singapore, Hong Kong, India, wherever. And this was one of the critical things that they would ask. Your ROE is so much, your ROA is so much. Why should we put money in your bank? That used to be something. I mean, we would always say that we are State Bank of India. I was with State Bank. We are India's biggest bank. And all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't really cut much ice with guys who are putting money in. The other factor is that along with the liquidity coverage ratio, we will also have a net stable funding ratio. And SFR is also going to be playing a major role in terms of assets where outflows will come after 30 days. So that again is another liquidity ratio that is getting imposed. On top of that, in India, we are one of the 2-3 countries in the world where you also have a statutory liquidity ratio. I think only Lebanon has a slightly higher statutory liquidity ratio, and you know what is happening in Lebanon. Half the time there is a civil war going on. But we still have. And we also have on top of that a CRR, which I don't know whether very many countries do. Now CRR is actually money for jam, literally. And one of our ex-chairmen used to say that we are subsidizing the Reserve Bank of India by giving them current account deposits, which they then lend out under the liquidity adjustment facility at 8% and give us 0. So we are actually giving them all that profit on the earning that they have on the CRR that we have. So I mean that's something for consideration. Apart from that, given the fact that after 2006 a lot of banks went under because of the stress, most central banks have started a stress testing arrangement. So they test you for stress in terms of ability to lose earnings, a certain increase in your stressed assets, which means your NPA and loss assets that you have,
and also in terms of any such impact that you can anticipate in the future, or maybe not even anticipate in the future. So stress testing is done on that basis to see at what level of stress you will continue to be a viable operation. This again puts a lot of stress in terms of what kind of portfolio you build up in a bank. And that becomes a challenge. It's a regulatory challenge, but it also opens up opportunities in terms of areas that you may not have looked at earlier, which you would now like to do. The third thing that I wanted to talk about is, again, the regulatory challenge of provisioning norms. The Reserve Bank of India raised its provisioning norms for different categories of your NPAs. This was done, of course, in 2010 or thereabout. But the impact of it was provisions had to be raised. They took away the 70% provision coverage ratio, but they added this, and therefore you found that there was a higher provisioning requirement. Today, once we move post 30th of March into the new year, financial new year, you will see that the provisioning norms for your restructured assets are going to will come at par with the NPAs that you have, which means again there will be a sudden spike in the total amount of provisioning you do. Where is that provisioning going to come from? That provisioning is going to come out of the bank's profitability. And if it is going to be squeezed out of bank's profitability, it will affect the first item I talked about, which is capital adequacy. Because that money is not going to be available to you through internal generation of resources. And therefore you will have to access markets to raise this money. And if you have to access markets, and all banks enter the markets simultaneously, including banks overseas, because they also have to maintain and meet certain Basel III requirements. You can imagine the crowding that is going to take place there and how this money is going to move in terms of costing. Similarly, if the Federal Reserve Bank decides to now do away with their liquidity policy and starts tightening norms, your cost will go up. Again, it will have an impact upon profitability of banks. Again, it will have an impact upon servicing of these funds that you are going to raise. Again, it will have an impact upon the internal capital that you are going to generate. Again, put pressure on the government of India to fund. So there, I'll come to the PJ&I committee report on this. And when we talk about that, you will see where the opportunities exist. But this is going to be another critical area for banks as they go forward. And finally, there is cross-sector regulation. As I told you, there are a lot of regulators looking at certain products, bank assurance for instance. Reserve Bank of India looks at it, IRDA looks at it. So you've got cross-regulatory influences working on it. In between there can be arbitrage also, if you can find the opening, and some bankers might do. Okay. Now, somebody that would tell me when I'm hearing the timing of it. This is the capital challenge. I talked about it substantially in the first part, but there are 2 or 3 new things that will be coming in. One is going to be the capital conservation buffer of 2.5% that will kick in by 2019 at the rate of 0.625% every year starting next year. So that is going to add to your capital requirement and again put pressure on the markets to supply you with that kind of capital. Reserve Bank of India has recently eased the norms for additional tier 1 and tier 2 kind of capital raising. But whether we have that kind of capital, whether people will be willing to put money into instruments that can suddenly be collapsed into equity and not be paid back. There is a provision for restitution where it can be temporarily written down and then written back. But these are going to be critical issues which are going to come up, and fundraising is going to be an issue. Merchant bankers will of course make a lot of money on this. There is also the need to have a counter-cyclical buffer. When they say when you make money in good times, stash part of it away for the bad times. Those are cycles. So this is a counter-cyclical measure that is being taken. And once you have a counter-cyclical buffer, you can take 1/3 of it at the time of a stress and build this into your own profit statements. Recapitalization of PSBs, public sector banks alone, and I'm not talking about private sector banks, is going to take about 5.8 trillion rupees. Then there are governance challenges. These are very critical challenges because governance is an issue which cannot be played with. It may not appear to be tangible, but even in its intangible form, it has very wide-ranging repercussions, including the strength of your business and your ability to continue to do business. So there are these points out here. The PJ committee, PJ Nayak committee recommendations. I've just given you a brief view on that, and you can have a look at that. Then there is a technology challenge. With the changing technology, not only is the way in which we do business changing, but the nature of business itself is changing. And today, financial sectors are seeing a vast change in the way they are doing business. We are also getting into a situation where banks can get, brick and mortar branch can get squeezed out of many markets because of technological innovation that is coming in. One simple example that I can give you is the result of, let us say, the 2008 financial crisis, when US banks stopped giving money to SMEs because they were high risk. We came up with the concept of crowdfunding. So crowdfunding was what? It was just putting your project on the net and letting people subscribe to it in whatever bit and piece that they felt they could spare from this. Crowdfunding today is becoming important. The Reserve Bank of India has recently issued a detailed circular on crowdfunding. So you can imagine going forward, SMEs can take recourse to this kind of financing, then go to banks, who, as far as their assets or their future assets lay in that particular sector. That's something that is to be considered. There is another area where you will have to look at financial impact, which is going to be in terms of direct benefit transfers, in terms of the Jan Dhan Yojana that has been started, in terms of the subsidies that are going to be provided, in terms of your anti-money laundering measures, your suspicious activity reporting, all that kind of stuff is going to be technology based, and it is going to have an impact upon how you do business. Because earlier these things were not being captured, now they will be captured. And Reserve Bank of India by itself is now also demanding that they should be getting machine data untouched by human hand. They also want a continuous flow of data. I remember when I opened a branch in Jeddah, Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, SAMA, had a software called SARI. It was Saudi Arabian Regulatory Information System. So SARI was plugged into your system and they were doing online monitoring of every transaction that you do. If it moved beyond a certain bandwidth in terms of what they set as levels of comfort for them, or compliance for them, you would immediately be getting a phone call. This transaction that you put through at 11:25 doesn't conform. Please explain. These kind of things are also there, and that is what we are moving towards. As volumes increase, complexities increase, and as technology inputs also become more available. Just to give you a perspective of the volumes, State Bank of India does about 2,000 transactions every second on the core banking. So there you have a fair idea. And State Bank of India, as I said, is not the biggest bank in the world. So you can have a fair idea of what this means. Another area which is risky is in terms of digital currency, where banks can get excluded entirely and money can move into an open ledger with your company. It doesn't need to even go through a bank. The settlements will be outside. That's another area where you have to see. Human resource challenge. The large number of retirements that is taking place is cleaning out a large amount of experienced people, leaving a vacuum in their place. Rapid promotions are now taking place, but they come without the requisite experience and skill to be able to handle some of these critical positions. Maintaining productivity norms and enforcing those. Buy-ins by employees in terms of what their corporate aspirations and individual aspirations are going to be. These are all going to be very, very critical factors as we move forward. Similarly, there are business challenges. So I talked about some of these, so I will not repeat myself on this. These are the opportunities. All these challenges will throw up a massive opportunities, but you have to be nimble-footed and you have to be there to be able to capture it. Asset reconstruction and loan recovery is a major area. It may not be within the bank, it can be outside the bank, but it can also be within the bank. In some banks, you have a special, let us say, stress asset resolution center. So these people are able to do this. I was talking to a friend of mine in a private sector bank. They in fact do some kind of linking. There is one good company in a particular sector, there is one company which is going bad in this sector, they try and do a sell-off between them. These are some of the things that can happen. There are business opportunities. CASA mobilization. CASA is the lifeblood of banking. This is zero cost funds. And this is what gives me my pricing power. And therefore, CASA mobilization through transaction pooling. The first bank to do it effectively was HDFC Bank. When they got all the brokers and the sub-brokers to open their accounts for them. There was a huge amount of pooling. Next step they did was go to government transactions, government revenue collections. huge amount of coding because they had the technology to do. Now everybody has that technology, but they have a lead start on us. Payment transaction banking, treasury operations, financial inclusion is going to be very, very critical because you are looking at a very large number, but again it will be technology driven. And then affordable housing is going to be another very big area that is going to come. It is expected that the middle class will grow from 200 million, that is 20 crores, to about 47.5 crores, sorry. Only 47.5 crores within about 10 to 12 years. So again, that's an area, and that's the middle class. So they are purchasing power. Therefore, housing is going to be critical, and all the spin-off industries that are associated with housing. So that is going to be another area. Then supply chain for agriculture. That's going to be very critical, given the fact that 40% of the agriculture produce is wasted in transportation, storage, and this is going to be very, very critical. And then advisory and consultancy services. That's going to go. Expected, as Mr. Kadari also said, about 10 times. And then private banking, project evaluation, manufacturing focus through innovative SME means, which among the others that I talked about was in case of crowdfunding. So you have all this coming up, including NRI business, international business as we go across border, and service sector growth with rising incomes. Therefore, retail banking is going to be very, very good. So these are some of the areas that I would like to talk about. If there are any questions, I don't know if we have 2 minutes. If you don't, then I can give you over to the next one.
Or let's reserve the question part
Okay.
all the speakers are done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sir, for sharing your knowledge. Now I would like to request Mr. Vijay Kaushik to share his views.
Hello friends, we'll discuss about challenges as well as the opportunities. After going through the document, I decided कि challenges पे बात करते हैं, सभी student हैं. And I had a discussion with Dr. Singh कि Vijay, keep it simple so that students हैं. अभी sir mentioned कि there are some first year students as well as the final year students. So I'll try to use the basic examples to connect you with the topic. Challenges. So you believe challenges are good in life? Any example? कोई भी दे सकते हैं. It's not mandatory कि आपको सिर्फ फाइनेंस का एग्जाम्पल दे. कोई भी other than finance. Please. लास्ट में से कोई भी अगर मेरे को बताएगा तो बड़ा अच्छा है. I have a gift for जो attractive participate करेंगे उनके लिए. Please. Challenges are good. कैसे कोई एग्जाम्पल? दाग अच्छे हैं, सर्फ एक्सेल, तो ऐसे चैलेंजेस भी अच्छे हैं.
When ISRO has to send its satellite to Mars and to launch what the first one was, the exploration.
Perfect. Other than this, if we talk about 1995 or around 1998, कैसा था?
Chaotic.
Okay. Nowadays, if you use metro, you see the response. कैसा है? सक्सेस है मेट्रो में. वाई? पहले चैलेंज था, बहुत ज़्यादा चैलेंज था. नाउ देयर इज अ सॉल्यूशन. सॉल्यूशन आ गया. अब देखिए, सी द सक्सेस ऑफ मेट्रो. यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? सो नाउ विल डिस्कस द चैलेंजेस ऑफ फाइनेंशियल इंडस्ट्री एंड देन विल डिस्कस द what all opportunities are available. This will help you to build your career in the same area, and then you can increase your probability of success. If challenges are there, then definitely कहीं ना कहीं opportunities होंगे. And sir mentioned, we'll discuss about BFSI domain. I mean, there are a lot of challenges at broking level, banking level, treasury में, exchange level. So I will start with the broking level. Major participants, traders are there. Traders, those who trade in stock market, commodity market, and currency markets. Investors, individual, institutional, corporates. But the hedgers, कौन होते हैं? टर्म आई है ना, ये भी चैलेंज से बाहर आई है। हेजिंग इज व्हाट प्लीज? नहीं, माय क्वेश्चन इज हु इज हेजर एंड व्हाट इज हेजिंग?
Protecting the securities and offsetting the risk. Risk factors.
Perfect.
Reducing the risk factor.
Perfect. So hedging is, I mean, there are certain levels, industries as well as the different segments. इतने challenges हैं वहाँ पे, but people are not at all aware of. Why? Let's discuss about the common challenge. क्योंकि मैंने अभी तीनों segment discuss करे. Can anyone share their views? What all are the common challenges? जो मैंने तीनों segment discuss करे. Please, last में से कोई बताएगा क्या? What all are the common challenges of equity market, commodity market और currency market? Only students are allowed. क्योंकि ये ना, हाँ please.
So risk of losing the money or uncertainty of the risk.
I would appreciate if you can, आपने just ask your parents to give 10 lakh rupees to you, कि उनको बोला मेरे को MBA नहीं करना है, मेरे को स्टॉक मार्केट में पैसा लगाना है, किस टाइप के स्टेटमेंट आएंगे आपको? क्या कहते हैं? कोई बताएगा? बता सकते हैं कोई ट्रेंड एकदम, What type of statement you are going to face? That is a gambling. You're getting the point. Other than this, मैं इधर तो आया नहीं मैं. Please. What type of statement? उनको बोलो ये 5 लाख रुपए दे दो and I will invest in stock market. तुम पागल हो गया? मैं ऐसे बोल देता हूँ. हमारा दिमाग तो ठीक है. ऐसा क्यों कहते? Why?
Because there are a lot of risks.
A proper organized regulator is there. Proper exchange is there. Brokers are there. कितना बड़ा हिस्ट्री है. 1994 में हमने सारी चीजें ऑर्गेनाइज कर दी थी, बट स्टिल आफ्टर 20 years लोग अभी भी इसे गैम्बलिंग प्लेस बोलते हैं. चैलेंज है नहीं है? यू गेटिंग द पॉइंट? कैन यू टेल मी द नंबर और द परसेंटेज, कितना टोटल ऑल ओवर इंडिया का कितना बड़ा परसेंटेज इसमें इन्वेस्ट करता है स्टॉक मार्केट में डायरेक्टली? आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट इनडायरेक्ट वाया म्यूचुअल फंड. कैन एनीवन टेल मी द परसेंटेज? 2%, नॉट इवन 2%. सी 2% में इतना बड़ा ब्रोकिंग है, रेगुलेटर है, सब कुछ है, बट स्टिल प्रॉब्लम तो है ना. लोग अभी भी बोल रहे हैं गैम्बलिंग है. और मैंने अभी यहाँ पे कुछ बोर्ड्स भी देखे थे, कुछ लोगों ने स्टॉक ब्रोकिंग में जॉब भी मिली है लोगों को. व्हाट इज द चैलेंज? व्हाई? मिस्टर सेन, एनी आंसर? व्हाई पेरेंट्स? और ये कॉमन परसेप्शन है, कोई मेरी नहीं है, आपकी नहीं है, या किसी और की नहीं है, ये मैं पहले बता देता हूँ.
There is uncertainty in this field, and the parents believe that their student or if we have done so much hard work, they should do some work in hard work only, not depend upon their luck.
परफेक्ट. सी हमें ये बात ना समझनी पड़ेगी कि आफ्टर 20 years we have an organized regulator, proper exchanges are there, everything is computerized, but still we believe it's a gambling place. लक काम करता है, करेंगे नहीं करेंगे. What is the reason behind this? चलो ये तो चैलेंज की बात है, बट व्हाट इज द रीजन? इतनी बड़ी प्रॉब्लम अभी तक क्यों है?
Lack of information.
Lack of information. There is a system called Bloomberg. I hope am I audible without mic. So there is the software name is Bloomberg. The product is well equipped with the information. I mean you will find each and every information in that particular software. But still, can you optimize the decision if you use that software? Is it? If you have 100% information, can you optimize your decision? Can you decide to enter in the stock market or a commodity or currency market? Most of the people, they don't know why share market is called share market. ये चैलेंज है. आप तो फिर भी MBA कर रहे हैं. लोग 12th पास होने के बाद they enter in the stock market. एक बार I will share one experience with you. एक सज्जन मेरे पास आए, मुझे I have 2 lakh rupees, I am planning to enter in derivative market. मैंने कहा सर are you sure you are planning to enter in derivative market? फिर मुझे मैंने देखा मेरे पड़ोसी के उसके यार ग्रीन लाइट गई थी, तो मैंने कहा सर ये 2 लाख रुपया हो सकता है 10 मिनट में जीरो हो जाए. he was not at all aware of. Why? What is the meaning of derivative market? Why to trade in derivative market? What is spot market? बस उसने एक को देखा, aura create हुआ उसके दिमाग में, yes the person is entering. क्या हुआ? इतना बड़ा लॉस हो गया. आपने पिक्चर भी देखी होगी, मुन्ना भाई MBBS हो जो टैक्सी चलाते हैं. तो ये सारी चीजें आपको कनेक्ट करनी पड़ेगी कि why. और अभी तक किसी ने मेरे को रीजन नहीं बताया कि what is the reason of this failure after 20 years. We have a good setup, but still हम अभी भी इसको gambling place बोलते हैं.
Because of the uncertain movements.
What else?
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge. Please. So ready or not? Awareness. Awareness तो है ही नहीं यहाँ पे. I mean, what I believe is my personal suggestion or personal recommendation कि regulators should decide if you are planning to enter in the stock market now, you'll have to pass this course. If your age is below 40 or above 40, then at least you will have to attend for 30 hours, training session to understand what is stock market and why stock market is called stock market. You getting my point? Either low or no awareness. I'll ask one question. Why there was need to set up a currency or a commodity market? So equity market का तो फिर भी आप थोड़ा बहुत बता सकते हैं, please.
Because earlier you were fraudulent by the delivery of the share, and the one who has to sell his particular share, having an investment, he needs a market. For example, now it's Sensex Nifty and all the stock market is.
What is my question? Why there is need to set up commodity and currency market? क्या जरूरत है इस मार्केट को बनाने की? Please. इक्विटी का तो मैं अभी बता भी दूंगा, हो सकता है आपसे पूछूं तो आप भी कोई बता दें, बट वाई? अभी आप इंटरव्यू में फेस कर सकते हैं किसी अच्छी कमोडिटी या करेंसी ब्रोकर या बैंक का, बट स्टिल यू आर नॉट अवेयर ऑफ, और ये आपकी गलती नहीं है. लेट मी टेल यू, मैं आपको डिमोटिवेट नहीं कर रहा हूँ, प्लीज. मैं आपको ये जो चैलेंजेस हैं अवेयर करा रहा हूँ कि सेबी बीइंग अ रेगुलेटर, देयर आई मीन दिस शुड बी द रिस्पांसिबिलिटी ऑफ सेबी कि each and every person who is entering in this industry, he must aware of what is the reason why there was need to set up a commodity exchange or a currency exchange or a security market. क्या कोई ये बता सकता है जो 2% लोग इंडिया में ट्रेड करते हैं या इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, उनमें से कितने % लोग सक्सेस इस मार्केट में? अभी कोई भी आंसर दे सकता है? पहली बात तो टोटल पॉपुलेशन का 2% इन्वेस्टमेंट करता है, उसके 2% है वो सिर्फ दे मेक प्रॉफिट. व्हाट एल्स? बट स्टिल टर्नओवर इज डूइंग लाइक एनीथिंग. व्हाई? नो अवेयरनेस और लो अवेयरनेस. देन व्हाई दे एंटर? जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ द ऑरा. अरे यार वो ट्रेड कर रहा है. यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? ये बात मैंने कुछ ऐसे बैंक्स में भी लोग देखे हैं या कुछ ऐसे बड़े इंस्टीट्यूशंस में भी लोग देखे हैं, दे आर ट्रेडिंग लाइक एनीथिंग बट दे डोंट नो द रीजन, व्हेन टू एंटर, व्हेन टू एग्जिट, व्हाट शुड बी द अप्रोच, दे आर नॉट अवेयर. सो आई मीन मैं भी एक और एग्जांपल देता हूं आपको. लाइसेंस इज रिक्वायर्ड अगर आपको ड्राइविंग करना है. ट्रेनिंग किसी का लाइसेंस बनवाया आप लोग में से किसी ने? लर्निंग लाइसेंस के लिए भी दे आस्क कि भैया एक बार ड्राइव करके दिखा दो. डिड यू ऑब्जर्व कि उसने आपको देखा या नहीं देखा, बट स्टिल ही इंसिस्ट टू ड्राइव फॉर अ मिनट. व्हाई? जस्ट टू क्रिएट अ फियर फैक्टर. बॉस एक बार अब ये चला के तो आया होगा ना, सीखा होगा इसने पहले, ओनली देन ही कैन परफॉर्म इन फ्रंट ऑफ द ऑफिसर. सो व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू एक्सप्लेन कि ट्रेनिंग इज रिक्वायर्ड. आप में से किसी ने राफ्टिंग करी है? राफ्टिंग करी पहली बार करी होगी तो क्या उसने ट्रेनिंग दी थी आपको? 5 मिनट की ट्रेनिंग दी थी राफ्टिंग में. व्हाई? जस्ट टू अवॉइड द रिस्क. यू गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? तो ट्रेनिंग मिसिंग है, अवेयरनेस मिसिंग है. ये तो चैलेंज है और यहीं पे ये अपॉर्चुनिटी एग्जिस्ट करती है, जो अपॉर्चुनिटी है इस इंडस्ट्री की. मोर ओवर व्हेन वी ट्रैवल इन अ फ्लाइट, आप 10 बार भी ट्रैवल करें ना, स्टिल यू हैव टू फेस द ट्रेनिंग पार्ट ऑफ 5 मिनट कि अगर हमें सी पे लैंड कराना पड़े तो व्हाट टू डू, देन फर्स्ट हेल्प योरसेल्फ बिफोर हेल्पिंग अदर्स. ये बात हमें ध्यान रखनी पड़ेगी. कि यहाँ पे एक इतना बड़ा चैलेंज है और इतनी बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी भी है. Just to avoid risk or accidents, regulator should make it compulsory to attend the training program. ये मेरा suggestion है, right? Problem raise करना, please यार 5 मिनट के बाद खूब फोटो शूट कर लेना, because once I connect to avoid disturbance create होता है, तो I request all of them not to shoot. Regulator, I personally recommend कि there must be a training program, compulsory training program. You know, if suppose I buy a ticket from National Stock Exchange, how much NSE charges? कितना चार्ज लेता है NSE? National Stock Exchange 1.5 करोड़ रुपया लेता है वो. Please correct me if I'm wrong, sir, is it? It's approximately 1.5 करोड़ रुपया लेता है. फिर I think they share also brokerage also. ब्रोकर भी यही करता है. But you know who sustains in the market? कौन से ब्रोकर हैं मार्केट में जो अवेलेबल हैं? Those who believe in the training, अपने क्लाइंटों में अवेयरनेस के लिए ट्रेनिंग्स में बिलीव करते हैं, they still exist. Otherwise, now they are out of code, almost, or they are in the state of decreasing. खत्म होते जा रहे हैं. Otherwise, मैं नाम नहीं लेना चाहता किसी particular company का, but still you will find lot of examples. Awareness should be there, and NSE, SEBI should make it compulsory, and NSE should implement this without failure and without any manipulation. Then we can increase the probability of success. Regulator, exchange, broker and then trader. कई बार हम लोग ट्रेडिंग में लोगों के साथ बैठते हैं, then we ask कि sir why there was need to buy Reliance at the level of 800. You know क्या funny आंसर आते हैं? अच्छा लग रहा था. उनसे पूछो अच्छा क्या लग रहा था इसमें? Is there any reason? नहीं, बस मुझे अच्छा लग रहा था. The moment you insist कि क्या अच्छा लग रहा था, then they realize कि कोई प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. एक और जो क्रिएट होता है ना, वो they don't go through the books of accounts and they don't read the charts or historical data for just to analyze before entering in a stock. That's why we recommend this should be the responsibility, because even drafting person is he is वो इस चीज को बड़ा सीरियसली ले रहे हैं कि अगर कोई एक्सीडेंट हो गया तो आपको कितनी बड़ी प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है, और वेल्थ अगर खत्म हो गई तो क्या हो सकता है. और वेल्थ यही आपको हेल्दी भी बना सकती है. If you study, if SEBI and NSE decide to train every participant, and then you will see that just a number increase in the percentage. 2% में इतना बड़ा सेटअप है, 25% हो गया तो कितनी बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी आ सकती है. Everything starts from right awareness at the right time at the right levels. I will share the one example of bank treasury. कितना बड़ा चैलेंज है मैं बताता हूँ आपको. Suppose you are an exporter or importer. मैं बड़ा basic example लेता हूँ so that you can understand things. Suppose you are an importer or exporter. Exporter हैं तो you will receive the payment. Suppose you get a $1. You go to bank. आप बोलो भैया ये मेरा डॉलर है, इसके अगेंस्ट में मुझे रुपी चाहिए. You call 10 banks at a time. सारे बैंक आपको ना डिफरेंट रेट देंगे. एक कहेगा 60 रुपीज टेक पैसा, अनदर मे कोट यू 60 रुपीज 20 पैसा, कोई होगा वो यूनिक ही होगा, अभी तो 59 ही चल रहा है. Look at the infrastructure. You don't have the access to verify the rates. Consistency is not there. Then what SEBI is doing? मुझे कुछ ऐसे बैंक भी पता चले हैं वो एक्सपोर्टर्स को डे का लोएस्ट रेट कोट करते हैं. Why? You are able to connect. See, you have $1 and you go to bank. बैंक में जाते कहते हैं बॉस ये मेरा $1 है, मेरे को इसके अगेंस्ट में रुपी चाहिए. तो जितना ज़्यादा रुपी मिलेगा उतना आपका एडवांटेज है ना, बट वो ज़्यादा कम से कम देने की कोशिश करते हैं. क्यों? ये उनका मार्जिन है. Treasury is the most profitable department of bank, but it's not at all organized. This is the area of challenge. Now what to do? If SEBI decides that there must be a particular percentage bank can charge, but over and above they cannot charge, तो यहाँ से कहीं ना कहीं हमें अपॉर्चुनिटी भी मिलती है. और हमारा जितना भी इंपोर्टर है, एक्सपोर्टर है, वो एक कंफर्ट जोन में आ जाएगा. You're getting the point? He'll never think to shift its back. So, awareness, lack of awareness, we'll have to organize lot of camps. Even Jaipuria can, take this initiative to start organizing such, workshops across India, and then you will see the tremendous response. Are you aware of what is NSCL scam?
Yes, yes. So,
Those are things, but what is the scam? National Spot Exchange. Is there anyone who is aware? Assume करें आज मैं सेबी या नेशनल स्पॉट एक्सचेंज से आऊँ, बिफोर insisting on you to enter in this exchange, I'll make you aware in the right, in a proper manner, कि what is this exchange, what is the advantage, and how this will help you out. Maybe this is not a right platform for you, maybe currency is the right platform for you, but at least their responsibility is to make everyone aware if you are planning to enter in a trade. So my belief is challenges are, कोई promotion नहीं हो रहा है, कोई awareness camp नहीं लग रहे हैं, and nothing is compulsory. Opportunities से भी इससे कितने ज़्यादा लोगों को नौकरियां दे सकता है, you can imagine. Trainers, but we need expert trainers, or they can prepare a ready-made documentation or a training material, so that this will help everyone to learn the things, to increase the probability of success, and definitely after couple of years you will see a rise in the number of participants. So what I recommend, just to the challenges as well as the opportunity. मैं एक चैलेंज में आपको जोक भी सुनाता हूँ. एक बार संता सिंह ना बैंक में जाता है. बैंक इज व्हाट, आज के टॉपिक में क्या है, इंटर. तो बैंक में जाता है संता सिंह, और वहाँ जाके बोलता है कि ये मेरा कैश है, जस्ट डिपॉजिट इन माय अकाउंट. वो लोग कहते हैं बॉस ठीक है, द कैशियर स्टार्ट्स काउंटिंग द नोट्स, द करेंसी. उसके बाद कहता है बॉस ये नोट फटा हुआ है, ये मैं डिपॉजिट नहीं करूँगा. तो संता सिंह क्या कहता है, बॉस ये मेरा अकाउंट है, आप मेरे अकाउंट में जमा करो. व्हाई यू आर आर्गिंग? थैंक यू वेरी मच.
I thought the name just was sitting somewhere. Secretary at Rocky. My name is Vikram Shokar and I work for Kali Private Wealth. To explain in a nutshell what Private Wealth is, we help manage money for investors. We try not to mismanage. We try to manage. And I'll try and give you some insights as to what this industry is. What are the challenges that we face in this industry? I'm not talking about the financial service industry as a whole. What are the challenges that we face in this particular industry or financial distribution, if I may call it that? And what are the opportunities in this industry? To start with a small overview, any individual in this country who has a certain amount of money and he wants to invest that money into financial products. There are multiple financial products. He may not have adequate knowledge, he may not have adequate time, he may not have the adequate infrastructure or resources to invest this money in the various asset classes available. So it comes to people like us who are supposed to be experts. We'll try to give the best possible advice for what this person can do with this money. But the reality is a little away from this. Most people, would have heard this example very often on the television or on the papers, that a financial advisor is like a doctor. जब बीमार होते हो दवाई खुद नहीं लेते हो, डॉक्टर के पास जाते हो. I bring this example one step down. मैं डॉक्टर का क्वालिफाइड नहीं हूँ. अगर इन्वेस्टर को अपना घर भी पेंट करवाना पड़ता है, वो एक पेंटर के पास जाता है, खुद नहीं लग जाता है पेंट करने के लिए. सो सिमिलरली अगर आप उस एक छोटी सी चीज़ के लिए भी आप एक एक्सपर्ट के पास जाते हैं, here we are talking of somebody who will manage your wealth, and hopefully if he does a good job, he will give you decent returns from that. Come to an expert. So the biggest challenge that we face as financial intermediaries or wealth advisors And if something from the regulatory side, I'm going to use this word interchangeably, but regulation prohibits.
in the morning.
So if somebody comes to me for advice on wealth, please come to me with full faith. That would be request our clients. But invariably that does not happen. Part of it is our fault, the industry's fault, and part of it is a bit of ignorance from the investor's point of view. So I'm just going to list out some challenges that we face in terms of customer. So when we go to a customer, what are the challenges that we face there? So that is a challenge from the investors or the customer's point of view. A lot of customers are Mr. Know-alls. They read a lot of economic times, they see a lot of TV, they speak to the neighbors in the morning walk, and all of them become financial experts. And telling somebody that Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, you are wrong, is very difficult. So the biggest challenge we face is to somewhere connect with the customer in a manner that if you have come to us, at least hear us out. At most meetings, we hear them out. This is a reality of this industry. As I said, a lot of information flows on the net, on the TV, on the newspapers. Hence, everybody feels that the experts. An opposite to this, which comes in irrespective of how much the person reads, watches, etc. If they don't spend enough time on the finances. You ask them for a meeting for an hour. Give me a meeting for an hour where I want to discuss a portfolio in greater detail. Invariably, the meeting will be 15 minutes. If they come down 15 minutes, I don't have more time. Now, here is somebody who is wanting to share inputs on the markets or either a portfolio, perhaps do a risk tolerance test, perhaps do risk profiling, perhaps give some kind of sane advice on markets. But the person does not have time. When we are talking of that person's money, so that's the second challenge, a shortage of time from the investors to spend on their own money. Third risk or third challenge that we face is that most clients are not aware of their own risk-taking capabilities. There will be a customer or a client or an investor who will say that, oh, it doesn't matter if I lose 20% in 3 months in a particular product. But after 3 months, if the portfolio has gone down even 3%, he panics. So there is a clear difference in the own perception of risk that an investor can take and what he shows us. And the contrary is also true. A person may say, I do not want any risk at all, but he may have the capability to take a lot of risk as investments. So the challenge that we face here is to somewhere try and reconcile the risk-taking perception and the risk-taking capability of an investor, and then somewhere make him invest his money. The next challenge we face is investors have stopped trusting us. We are bad boys, right? And I'm not saying that all of us are good boys. Some of us are bad boys as well. And we have seen this over a period of time that because of various reasons, products are missold, products have been missold, portfolio values have been wiped out, etc., etc., etc. But somewhere the investor will have to use that kind of judgment as to who is good and who is bad. And here I'll take the doctor example. You always go back to the doctor who treated you well. So you cannot paint all doctors the same brush. Similarly, you can't treat all financial advisors as bad boys. So that is the reason why we typically prefer to have longer relationships with clients so that we understand what we are doing. And when I talk of challenges from the firm's point of view or the advisor's point of view, I'll come to this again, but just connect these two at that point of time. The next challenge that we face is that over a period of time, products are more complicated. Good old days, LIC की टेबल 75 होती थी. I don't know how many of you be aware of that. Or a very simple 20-year money back plan या fixed deposit होता था. आजकल structures होते हैं, specialized PMS होते हैं, PE funds होते हैं, startup funds होते हैं. So the products have got complicated, and somewhere the investing public, or the investor has not kept pace with how fast the products have modified over time, or products have evolved over time. So explaining that to the client is a big challenge. And last and perhaps the biggest challenge from the investor point of view is that the investors do not share complete financial information with us. And again, as I said, there may be different models, but the model that follow a financial advisory model, and that's the model that we follow. Our endeavor is to be a CFO for a client. We prepare the client's P&L and the balance sheet, and then have to figure out what to do with the money. But in case the client is not sharing his complete information with us, our output will not be complete. So convincing the client to share all financial information with us at times is a very big challenge for us. Now coming back to the just changing tracks, the challenges from the point of view of a wealth advisor from mine. What are the challenges that I give to this industry? All of us work on a revenue model. So people who are not aware of what a revenue model is, each one of us has to generate a certain amount of revenue every month or every quarter, depending on the kind of organization you work for. And a revenue pressure or revenue target will push a lot of people, a lot of advisors to take a shortcut. So that is a challenge that this industry has to somewhere solve. And there has been some movement of this. There are now firms that are called open architecture firms. That means whatever product you sell, the revenue comes to the RM or the wealth advisor. Hence, you will not sell a wrong product. And let me just elaborate this a little more. Typically, you sell insurance of one firm, and insurance is widely missold in this country. So, if you are selling the insurance of company X, where the